Alright everyone, we start off today laughing about the leftoids a little bit again from the strategic perspective actually, because when we see the infighting really on the left, at least the margins of it in some cases, between like Jimmy Dore and the Young Turks, or him and now Kyle Kulinski, Tim Pool and other people who are liberal or on the left, wherever they are on that spectrum, when we see how these people interact with one another and what some of the cringy fringe leftoids say and do, we can get a feel for why the left consistently loses. It ties into the overstretching aspect, which that's more partisan politics. It's more like what parties do. Democrats, labor officials or whatever in the UK, happens on the right, but sporadically. Anyway, first and foremost, before I explain this, keep in mind down below, if you're watching this video on YouTube, there will be a pinned comment with links to 4 other video hosting sites that I use. Now, I make 4 videos every day. Only 2 of them go on YouTube, mainly because of algorithmic mumbo-jumbo, also partially because of censorship. Now, here's the thing. I was looking at, because Jimmy Dore and Kyle Kulinski, another commentator, podcaster basically, have gotten into it, and Kulinski made like an hour-long, I think, segment on Jimmy Dore, which is slightly obsessive and slightly funny. By the way, Kulinski not the greatest judge of character. For instance, he was asked one time on a stream if he would debate me, and then launched off into basically quoting Rational Wiki, whatever. But anyway, I was thinking to myself, some of the comments below that, when that was posted about on Kulinski's Twitter page, some of the comments from the leftoids there were astonishing. Like one person was saying Jimmy Dore was the gateway to the right wing, or the alt-right or something, calling him basically an extreme or extremist or sellout, based solely on the fact that of 2 things. Number one, he recognizes some of the problems inherent within the left's own discourse. Its purity spiraling, the fact that people who are more pragmatic leftists basically don't seem to have a problem with the most notorious elements of the far left, the grift left as I call them, or the cringe fringers. And the fact that you've tried to create a broad tent that includes literal Marxists alienates every reasonable person in the country. And Tim Pool is similar to this. That is, that he's a liberal, well, marginally left on some issues, I'd say as well, same with Jimmy Dore, that understands basic pragmatism and basic strategy. But what you end up getting is you get further leftists saying that they're gatekeepers, or that they're sellouts, or that they're being problematic, even though what they're suggesting is actually the kind of, like if you wanted to take it into the realm of political activism, in the sense of taking over a party, creating a party or something, they would be the pragmatists maybe actually capable of accomplishing something. You've got other people that are on the far left that think that having a Chairman Mao shirt is going to endear them to the average individual, and they don't seem to understand why they consistently fail. When you attack the more reasonable voices within your own, again, wide umbrella sort of movement, and alienate them, and then they turn around and tell you that, you know, you're being atrocious, you lack strategic thinking, certainly, as they've pointed out about the furthest left, then they lash out even more. It's like they're incapable of taking any sort of learning from any other individual. They would say, well, Tim, like I've seen people claim that Bernie Sanders is kind of a conservative. And they base this on some apparently mythological, massively far-left Marxist power that supposedly exists in Scandinavia or something. Like people that don't even have a clue about these economic models. I see people who are just like anti-SJW leftoids that are dogpiling people like Jimmy Dore, Tim Pool, and so forth as well. They would rather hang around with literally self-proclaimed communists. And they think that this is... I think some of them are just grifting. That is, that they know that it's bullshit, they're doing it for their career. Others genuinely seem to believe that aligning with communism is like a long-term political strategy that's actually going to take hold. They actually believe that. They base this on some perceived movement within the corporate subculture, I think, more than anything else. When you're aligned ideologically, at least in the general sense, with Fortune 500 companies, it's not exactly a progressive movement that you're talking about. It's just an authoritarian one, which is hilariously the spawn of the anti-SJW mentality at some points. I'm not idpol, but let me involve myself with idpol. It's really important and totally not a self-defeating worldview. But I think, by the way, some people say, well, never interrupt your enemy while they're making a mistake. First and foremost, as a person who's not a conservative, I don't consider the average garden variety liberal to be my enemy. Number two, the leftoids, the ones I'm actually discussing, they're not going to change their behavior. They've been purity spiraling now for years. The sort of posts like on Tumblr or something that would have been hyperbole 5 years ago. Jokes about the far left, about what they supposedly would say. Like with the special snowflake space, safe space, revisionism and getting offended at everything and like, you know, trying to get paused and stuff. That sort of hyperbole, jokes about the far left, have become reality. They're not going to stop. These people are imploding. By the way, it's a great cringy embarrassment and it's hilarious to watch because it was foretold by many people saying, I think you're wandering off a lemming-like cliff. Elements of the right almost did the same thing. Although you'll note that a lot of the more prominent alt-right voices now sound like Bernie Sanders, only racist, basically. They've become bigoted Bernie. It's very, very funny to watch because I'm thinking that people may not have understood basic economics to begin with and thought they were on the right simply because of some really an adopted tradcon sort of social mentality, without any actual sort of economic understanding about what left and right truly actually mean. Arguing for centrality in many cases. Of course, we all know that that's automatically leftist. Leftism is automatically centralized. When I'm looking at this, I'm looking at, you've got a sane commentator like Jimmy Dore, someone whose audience is not just people who have tilted off into lefty la-la land. Or Tim Pool, again, somebody who has a relatively large audience, appeals to individuals who are not far left. Like, I watch his content. I don't agree with everything he says, but he's not obnoxious about it. Then you have people coming from way out in left field, and Kalinsky's like, I mean, he's certainly further left than Jimmy Dore, but he's not out in Marxism land. You have people taking like cheap shots at them, despite the fact that they're probably the only people that you could label generically liberal/left or center left or whatever term you wanted to use, that would actually be sane enough to actually implement any sort of political strategy beyond simply grifting, beyond simply complaining on a podcast or something. Like Jimmy Dore could probably organize a political campaign. Zhank and the Justice Dems stabbed him in the back the second that they did succeed, just with his sort of fiscal help more than anything else. Hey, you happen to have a big show that used to have, by the way, a large dynamic audience. Not so much anymore. So you help us and then we'll stab you in the back, which, by the way, was hilarious. This is the way the left operates. A lot of the people that are leaders within any political movement tend to be grifters anyway. They're in it for themselves. They want to get into a political position and then they stab their constituents in the back. People like Elizabeth Warren. It's funny to watch it happen. And people are none the wiser most of the time. They don't even notice that it's going on. That's about all. Peace out.